Hi guys, welcome back. Myself Akshayan. I'm currently pursuing my BE in SVC Bangalore. My topic is file concepts and access methods. Today I'm going to discuss about introduction of files, file structure, file types, file access mechanisms, advantages and disadvantages of file access mechanisms, at last space allocation. Moving on to the introduction, a file is a named collection of related information that is recorded on secondary storage such as magnetic disk, magnetic tapes, and optical disks. In general, a file is a sequence of bits, bytes, lines, or records whose meaning is defined by the file's creator and user. Files are organized into hierarchical structure through directories or folders, forming a file system. The file system provides a way to organize and manage files, allowing users and applications to locate, access, create, modify, and delete files. Each file has a unique name within its directory, which helps identify and differentiate it from other files. File structure. It refers how the data is organized within an individual file. It depends on the file format or type and is typically defined by the application or standard that governs the file content. A file structure should be according to a required format that operating system can understand. A file has a certain defined structure according to its type. A text file is a sequence of characters organized into lines. A source file is a sequence of procedures and functions. An object file is a sequence of bytes organized into blocks that are understandable by the machine. When operating system defines the different files, it also contains the code to support this file structure. Unix MS-DOS support minimum number of file structure. File type. File type refers to the ability of operating system to distinguish different types of file such as text files, source files, and binary files, etc. Many operating system supports many types of files. Operating system like MS-DOS and Unix have the following types of files. Those are ordinary files, directory files, and special files. Moving on to the ordinary files. These are the files that contain user information. These may have text, databases, or executable program. The user can apply various operations on such files like add, modify, delete, or even remove the entire file. Directory files. These files contain the list of file names and other information related to these files. Special files. These files are also known as device files. These files represent physical devices like disk, terminals, printers, networks, and tape drive, etc. These files are of two types. Character special files. Data is handled character by character in case of terminals or printers. Block special files. Data is handled in blocks as in the case of disks and tapes. Moving on to file access mechanisms. File access mechanisms refers to the manner in which the records of a file may be accessed. There are several ways to access files. Those are sequential access, direct or random access, at last indexed sequential access. Moving on to the sequential access. A sequential access is that in which the records are accessed in some sequence, that the information in the file is processed in order, one record after the other record. This access method is most primitive one. Example, the compilers usually access files in this fashion. A pointer is maintained which initially points to the base address of the file. If the user wants to read the first word of the file, then pointer provides that word to the user and increases its value by one word. This process continues till the end of the file. Modern word systems do provide the concept of direct access and indexed access, but most used method is sequential access due to the fact that most of the files such as text files, audio files, and video files, etc. need to be sequentially accessed. There are some advantages and disadvantages of sequential access. Advantages: simple and easy to implement, suitable for storing large amounts of data, requires less memory. Disadvantages: not efficient for accessing specific data or making changes to the data, slow for reading or writing data in middle of the file. Direct access. The direct access is mostly required in the case of database systems. In most of the cases, we need filtered information from the database. The sequential access can be very slow and inefficient in such cases. Suppose every block of storage stores 4 records and we know that the record we needed is stored in the 10th block. In that case, the sequential access will not be implemented because it will traverse all the blocks in order to access the needed record. Direct access will give the required result despite of the fact that the operating system has to perform some complex tasks such as determining the desired block number. However, that is generally implemented in database applications. As you can see in the diagram, the required data is accessed directly, while in sequential access, the data is accessed sequentially. Here are some advantages and disadvantages of direct access. Advantages: provides fast and efficient access to specific data within the file, suitable for devices that require fast access to specific data. Here the file size is smaller than with random access. Disadvantages: requires knowledge of physical layout of data within the file. May require special hardware or software to access data directly. Gaps can be left in the file which can impact the performance. Indexed access. If a file can be sorted on any of the file, then an index can be assigned to a group of certain records. However, a particular record can be accessed by its index. The index is nothing but the address of the record in the file. In index accessing, searching in a large database becomes very quick and easy, but we need to have some extra space in the memory to store the index value. Advantages and disadvantages of indexed access. Advantages: provides fast and efficient access to files by name or attributes, making it suitable for applications that require searching and retrieving specific files quickly. Disadvantages: the index must be maintained, which can require additional disk and space and processing time. Space allocation. The files are allocated in disk spaces by operating system. The operating systems deploy the following main three ways to allocate disk spaces to files. Those are contiguous allocation, linked allocation, and indexed allocation. Contiguous allocation. Each file occupies a contiguous address on space disks. Assigned disk address is in linear order. It is easy to implement. External fragmentation is a major issue with this type of allocation technique. Advantages and disadvantages of contiguous allocation. Both the sequential and direct access are supported by this. For direct access, the address of kth block of the file, which starts at block B, can be easily obtained as B plus K. This is extremely fast since the number of seeks are minimal because of contiguous allocation of file blocks. Moving on to the disadvantages, this method suffers from both internal and external fragmentation. This makes it inefficient in terms of memory utilization. Increasing file size is difficult because it depends on the availability of contiguous memory at particular instance. Linked list allocation. In this scheme, each file is a linked list of disk blocks which need not to be contiguous. The disk blocks can be scattered anywhere on the disk. The directory entry contains a pointer to the starting and ending of the file block. Each block contains a pointer to the next block occupied by the file. Advantages and disadvantages of linked allocation. Advantages: this is very flexible in terms of file size. File size can be increased easily since the system does not have to look for a contiguous chunk of memory. This method does not suffer from the external fragmentation. This makes it relatively better in terms of memory utilization. Moving on to the disadvantages. Because the file blocks are distributed randomly on a disk, a large number of seeks are needed to access every block individually. This makes linked allocation slower. It does not support random or direct access. We cannot directly access the block of a file. A block K of a file can be accessed by traversing K blocks sequentially from the starting block of the file via block pointers. Pointers required in the linked allocation incur some extra overhead. Indexed allocation. In this scheme, a special block known as index block contains the pointers to all the blocks occupied by a file. Each file has its own index block. The ith entry in index block contains the disk address of the ith file block. The directory entry contains the address of the index block. Indexed allocation. In this scheme, a special block known as index block contains the pointers to all the blocks occupied by a file. Each file has its own index block. The ith entry in index block contains the disk address of the ith file block. The directory entry contains the address of the index block. Here are some advantages and disadvantages of indexed allocation. This supports direct access to the blocks occupied by the file and therefore provides fast access to the file blocks. It overcomes the problem of external fragmentation. Disadvantages. The pointer overhead for indexed allocation is greater than linked allocation. For every small file, say the files expand only 2-3 blocks, the indexed allocation would keep entire block for the pointers, which is inefficient in terms of memory utilization. However, in linked allocation, we lose the space of only one pointer per block. For files that are very large, single index block may not be able to hold all the pointers. The following mechanisms can be used to resolve the problem. Linked scheme. This scheme links two or more index blocks together for holding the pointers. Every index block would contain a pointer or the address to the next index block, multi-level index. In this policy, a first level index block is used to point to the second level index blocks, which in turn points to the disk blocks occupied by the file. This can be extended to 3 or more levels depending on the maximum file size. This was all about file access and mechanisms. Hope you liked this video. Thank you.